Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 3 of the USA League. Today, we have a special guest, Siggi Nagele from Nagele College Planning Services. He's been in the game. He's been at Florida Southern College. He's done it all. Siggi, super excited to have you.
I appreciate you having me. Look forward to speaking with everyone.
Awesome. Yes, so topic for today's podcast, it's something, obviously we have tryouts coming up. We have a bunch of players looking at where they're going to be going to next, and also a lot of players that are growing out of the club game and they're looking for their next step and the next level into the college game. And I know that's an area of expertise for you. So as a former college coach, how did you start your business? Where did your career take you?
Yeah, first I got to give you a little background. I was born and raised in Frankfurt, Germany, for the most part until my mom got remarried. So in 1980, I'm going to date myself. I graduated from high school, and I wanted to continue playing soccer. The University of Maryland had a campus in Munich, Germany, and all my high school buddies were going there. And I'm like, I want to see the United States. I want to continue playing. So I ended up at a small school in West Virginia. I was blessed enough to get a full ride between my academics and my soccer ability, and I wasn't phenomenal at either one, but good enough to get a full ride. So that kind of planted the seed back, 46 years ago, that there has to be a better way. I waited way too long. I didn't know what I was doing. Who could I talk to? And it ended up being an art teacher of mine at my high school for American military dependents that actually made me aware of the school that I ended up signing with. And to this day, one of my most prized possessions is the handwritten full scholarship offer from my college coach back in the days when we faxed things back and forth. So
Yeah.
I would say 46 years ago, this idea was planted, and then 23 years ago, I actually incorporated. And, I was getting questions as a club coach, how do I get in college? What do I need to do? So it was mostly part-time until a couple of years ago. And I actually worked for Kai at Florida Youth Soccer for many years, started the program at Eckerd College in St. Pete on the women's side. And my last stop was at Florida Southern. And I ran the ODP program, Olympic Development Program for the state of Florida for 8 years. So I've worn a lot of hats, got a great network of people that trust me, making recommendations, and I've taken that into my business.
That's awesome. No, it's always great to have someone in the community that obviously you've been in different roles, right? So from coaching to administrative work, and now you're leading the next generation into their paths. It's just awesome to see. And I know, obviously, so we have our partnership as well, which is what we've created with the United Soccer Association, and just providing your services to our member clubs. Can you tell me a little bit more about, obviously, I know you help them in their path and finding the right fit for them. Can you just tell me a little bit about what a player can expect in their college recruiting services?
Yeah, again, it's fact versus fiction. So I always try to encourage them to start as early as possible. I'm a big fan of starting at ninth grade as you enter high school, so they can make sure they take the right classes. They can identify maybe some teachers that might be a good reference later on. But at the end of the day, the first two things I always do with people I work with, and I work with clubs, high schools, individual families, et cetera, is we create a professional profile for them. We capture their academics, their financial information, their background in soccer, their highlight video, their references. So by the time they present themselves to a college coach, like you were in the past, the college coach should know everything about them in maybe one profile. So that's one of the key things. And most people have no idea where to start in the process. Yeah. So we do kind of a Q&A for about an hour and try to identify what are some things that are extremely important to the student athlete or the family. Whether it's, hey, I want to stay close to home, or, hey, we've got a limited budget, or I want to chase my dream of D1, or, I want to go to a big campus in a big city, or whatever it might be. So we try to get a feel early on, and obviously that changes as you go through the process. but to start focusing on things that might be important come final decision. So overall, we just try to educate, and I'm a certified college advisor, and what that means is I'm able to help them with their academics, their financial aid, their recruiting rules, their soccer resume, highlight video, social media, anything you can think of that goes into the recruiting process. So
Yeah.
we try to make them aware of there's a lot more to it than maybe just having a talent to play this game. If you don't have structure or a plan or a roadmap,
Yeah.
I always say you're like a one-legged duck, going around in circles. You're going to waste a lot of time and money.
Very true. No, very true. And it is more than just your ability to play, right? It goes beyond because obviously it's college soccer. You're not professional.
Mhm.
It's you don't get paid for it. Well, now you have all these different NIL things. The
Right.
game is changing. The landscape is just completely evolving. Um, and I know, obviously, back when you started Eckerd and when I was over at Weber International, it even from the NAI level to the into the NCAA, it is changing vastly. Um, you said something, and I wanted to speak on it because I think a lot of players or student athletes when they get into this recruiting process, they're always looking for the full ride, or they're looking for that athletic scholarship that's going to pay for their school. For me myself, when I played at the NAI level, but I had a full coverage, right, in regards to scholarship, but I didn't have an athletic um, full ride. It was very different. And can you talk about that a little bit and how that looks? Obviously, I know schools are very different in the way they operate, but can you tell me a little bit more about athletic scholarships, academic scholarships, and how it varies?
Yeah, I'm actually the perfect example, and I played NAIA too in West Virginia. But my mom was a stay-at-home mom. My father was in the service, so my senior year, when I wanted to explore the possibility of going to play college abroad, they're like, "Well, good luck, and hopefully you have the grades and you've got the information you need." There was no money there, so again, I wasn't phenomenal at soccer or my academics, but it was put one on top of the other, and I was able to afford a small private NAIA school. So my big thing always is don't go into huge debt trying to finance your college education. There are grants and scholarships available, which are things you don't have to pay back, or even work study where you might have a job on campus and you can put that money
Yep.
towards buying your books or paying your bill. So I'm a big fan of get as much of that free money as possible. And if it comes down to you maybe taking out a small loan, which I did just for spending money because I came from another country and didn't have any savings, then it might make sense to take out a small loan. But the more your GPA, the more your test scores kind of reflect the quality of student you are, then the higher the financial aid will be as well. And people need to realize that Division III doesn't offer athletic scholarships, so everything's based on you're married or something that you do well, or it's based on your family income. Whereas Division II, Division I, NAI junior colleges have scholarships that they can divvy up.
Yeah. No, they're spot on. Yeah. Division III, I remember when I was doing a bunch of ID camps. And obviously we are not an NCAA Division I school. We are not world renowned, when I was at Weber International.
Mhm.
But I will say when a player is educated and they're able to identify that, yes, we are an NAI school, instead of coming to us and saying, oh, you guys are a Division III school, you cannot offer athletic scholarships. I think that's something that a lot of players do miss, especially here in Florida. We don't have any Division III schools here in Florida.
Correct.
So that is something that I think has, I don't want to say misconveyed, but I think players don't necessarily explore that side of it. They either see, at least for me, what I've seen is a lot of players look for that Division I school, or it's nothing, especially maybe on the women's side. It's a little different than on the boys' side.
Mhm.
But yeah, that's something that I've definitely seen as well. Um, Go ahead.
Yeah, the D1 or bust mentality just drives me insane because, again, all I saw on TV was like Duke, and I saw Maryland and Penn State, because that's all that was on TV. You never saw a D2 or NAIA or D3 school on international television. So I thought that's all that existed. So I reached out to Maryland and Penn State and some of those schools. And even though we beat Penn State with my college team being an NAIA school in the spring game, I probably had no business looking at those schools. And that sometimes is the hardest conversation to have with players, whether they're clients or, players on my team is, what's your true playing level? Make sure that you are realistic, because you can chase a bunch of top 25 Division I schools, waste a lot of time, energy, and money going to camps and going all over, and they're never going to give you a look if you don't fit whatever criteria they have.
Yeah.
So, a lot of people don't even realize what a great opportunity NAI and junior colleges and even military academies or Christian colleges are, because my whole company was founded, Ethan, on finding the right fit for everybody I consult with. And I take that to heart, because sometimes you have to have those tough conversations. Yeah, would I like to have played at Marshall? Sure, and win a national championship a couple of years ago, or Clemson? Yeah, I coached at Marshall as a grad assistant, but that's as close as I got to D1 talent. So it's just a matter of having honest conversations, understanding the level that you're at, having some what we call reach schools, where again they might be a little bit of a stretch, but nothing wrong with having a few of those. But you don't want your entire list of schools to be nothing but reach schools, because you're going to get very disappointed and very frustrated. But have some NAIs, some D2s, some D3s, some JUCOs on there, so you at least have something to compare to and allow yourself some possibilities.
Yeah. How do you feel? So, I had a lot of calls when I was at Weber International as a coach and as a player.
Mhm.
But there were players at times, since we were in NAI school, where it was more or less it was a conversation for them just to practice almost before they went and had that Division I phone call, or their aspiration to continue searching for that Division I school. What do you think about that in regards to, players just taking phone calls or doing those things? Any advice or tips on that?
Yeah, I'm not a big fan when they waste kind of somebody's time, but I think it is good practice. I had a player one time that took an official visit to out to Stanford, I think, or maybe it was Pepperdine, but she had no intentions of going to the West Coast. But because they offered her an official visit, she took the trip. Probably wasted the coach's money. Ended up signing, I think, with William and Mary over here in Virginia. But I think it's really important that they, first of all, like you said, they know who they're talking to in terms of level, conference, division, and so forth. So they have a good understanding. They do their research. How successful has the school been? How long has the coach been there? Are they putting players at the next level, if that's your goal? So you have to do your research in terms of, is this going to be a good fit for me if I pursue this opportunity? But overall, they have to make sure that they are realistic about their playing ability, and maybe shoot a little bit higher with a couple of schools. Have some what they call safety schools that are no
Mm,
brainers that they can get into, no problem. But they have to practice on somebody. So I'm the teacher, I'm the educator. I'll help them, prep
yeah,
them for their. So at least they know what questions to ask and what they should be, communicating and how to conduct themselves on a call. But
exactly.
just like we talked to a bunch of people when we were recruiting, you know, they have to talk to as many people as possible to figure out what's best for them.
Yeah, it's just finding the best fit, 100%.
Yeah.
Um, I so the college community is so small, right? So
Hmm.
like I know even now I'm not coaching college soccer, but even when I was for 2 years, the network of the whether it was in a different state, whether it was an NCAA D2, D3, D1 school, whatever it might, JUCO,
Hmm.
um, the community of coaches are so small and everyone speaks to one another. So for me on my end, I can't voice enough how important it is that you leave a good impression, or at least you have a good relationship, whether you choose that school or not, because coaches do talk, right? And I know for me, and when I was coaching with Jack Paris over at Weber, a big thing for him was culture, inside the program. The results would come, but the culture was the first thing. It was foundational. And that was a big thing that we did look at, right? Is are they a good fit? and then we spoke to, different colleges, especially if you were a transfer. Um, that was something that we definitely looked at, and we didn't appreciate when people would waste our time either. But
Yeah.
it is part of it.
It is. And, college coaches do talk to each other. I know there's been plenty of opportunities where when I was coaching at college, I didn't have any money for a player that I really liked. And, she couldn't make it financially work to maybe come to my school. But, I might call you up and say, hey, Ethan, I got this great player, maybe give her a shout if you have any money left over in your program.
Yeah.
And I actually had, I think, a player that was committed verbally to a college, and those two guys were having a beer in a lobby somewhere. And the other coach says, yeah, I got this verbal commitment from so and so, and it ended up being the same girl. So I'm
That's,
like,
oh,
you
wow.
want to bury yourself in this business, and you never know. You moved on, I moved on. You never know where these coaches end up. And getting back to your statement, I couldn't agree more that you have to be respectful, because maybe an assistant coach you have a great relationship with and it doesn't work out. Maybe they finally get that dream job and you want to transfer because they treated you the right way, and vice versa. So relationships are everything. These coaches want to be able to trust you, want to be around you, want to get to know who you are, what makes you tick, so they know exactly what they're getting.
Yeah, spot on, 100%. So I want to shift this conversation just slightly over in regards to, we have obviously the World Cup's coming here, right? We have so many different cultures and different players from different countries coming in. And I know you work with the majority of players here based in the US. Is that correct?
Yeah, I've got a couple in one in Germany, one in Australia, some on the West Coast. But yeah,
Okay.
I'd say probably 99% of mine are soccer players, men or women. I do have a couple football, basketball, track
Okay.
that I work with. But for a college coach, they have three choices, Ethan. It's I go international, and I
Yeah.
can pick maybe somebody out of the Bayern, Barcelona, Arsenal youth system if they can't quite break the next rank, or I can go to the transfer portal and sit on it every morning. Hey, who's in the portal? Who do I like? And the third group is the high school player. So the high school players got their work cut out, and they need to stand out to compete with these sometimes older transfer portal players or these internationals that come from very good academies. But
Yeah.
it's all about how you present yourself and the interactions you have with the coaches.
Yeah. So obviously, like when they're a high school player, they're competing with those kids that are either, well, private schools a little bit different,
Mhm.
but you do have those public schools and the zoning maps, right?
Mhm.
And so you go from maybe being the best player in your high school team to now you're competing globally. And that was what I was aiming towards is, how do players here in the U.S., how are they competing with, you know, um, you have players that are 22 years old and they're a freshman, in the NAIA. How do you what tips, or how do you give advice towards players that you're working with here in the U.S. and knowing that they're going to be competing with a completely different realm of players?
Yeah, that was me. I had to compete with a 25-year-old freshman just coming out of the army on the GI Bill, and here I was this bushy-eyed, 17, 18-year-old, no clue what I was doing. But I think it's you got to believe in yourself first of all, but understand you've got to find ways to stand out. So my coach ended up giving me my full ride between my academics and soccer. He loved the way I communicated. I was constantly either faxing them or sending him updates and newspaper clippings and things like that. The advantage the American players have is, most coaches can see them play many, many times. Whereas the transfer portal players, they might still be at the college. They, might not be playing because they've left that college. The internationals, you got to fly over there. They rarely come over this way unless it's an international tournament. So their visibility should be better. So if they can get coaches to get to see them play, but as you know, there's more and more coaches that are going to Europe, they're going to South America, they're going to Africa, and spending money and traveling to find that hidden gem, because they're looking at a lot of the same players, either in Florida or in the country. So they got to find that player that might, be a program changer. I
Yeah.
played with a guy that was from Jamaica. He was on the Jamaican national team, and closest thing to like Pele or Messi I've ever seen. but he ended up being such a distraction to our team that my coach got rid of him
Yeah.
his junior year, and I give him a lot of credit for that. You mentioned culture earlier. He was bad for our culture. He scored a crap load of goals, but he just wasn't a team player. He wasn't somebody that we could
Yeah.
count on.
Yeah. It's not talent alone, right? It's more than
Oh, for
that. Like,
sure. It's it's
yeah.
sometimes it's more important what kind of person you are because they're gonna be days as a college athlete that you're questioning, am I good enough, or why am I not playing, or I got to compete against 4 or 5 players for playing time. And if you don't have a good sense of self belief, a good background in your training environment, and sometimes you have to buy your time. And I
Yeah.
remember a conversation I had with Vic from University of Florida before he retired, and he
Yep.
said we don't allow our players, our children, to be resilient anymore. We're always like hiring a private trainer, or we're getting rid of coaches because my kid's not playing. That's not how you solve problems. That doesn't prepare them for the real world. So I think if we can allow our children sometimes to be more resilient and fight their own battles and just put in the time and effort and earn more playing time every year, that would be my best advice. That again, coaches are going to see the domestic players more than they will the transfer portal. And sometimes the transfer portal is someone else's headache that they're going to inherit. So they don't necessarily know what they're getting sometimes. But, there's more and more coaches that are not going to big showcases because they're going to sit on the transfer portal or spend a week or
Smart.
two in Europe and find what they want.
Yeah. Yeah, that's just how it is. That's the landscape. It's just changing, man. You have to, I know most coaches, especially at the higher levels, you need to win, right? They need results and they need players that can consistently bring them results, but also at the same time build that sustainable culture and that family. And, those are all things I know that I experienced within my time as a college coach. You mentioned too, about, players and they're not able to be resilient anymore. And I think a big thing, obviously, I work within an organization that runs a youth league. And I know you work with the various youth clubs. Um, with tryouts coming up, we're just dabbled just briefly on tryouts here. Um, what advice do you have for players preparing for tryouts? Obviously, it's a bit different than college, but some players, a topic that we spoke with Mark Godwin from Winter Haven Soccer Club is, the grass isn't always greener. What advice do you have for players looking for their next step or going back to their club?
Yeah, my advice is going to be ignore I call it the alphabet soup. And that's always the elephant in the room. Is it ECNL? Is it GA? Is it MLS Next? Is it NPL? Is it National League One? Is it this or that? At the end of the day, if I'm on a team, I'm playing a lot and I feel like I'm developing, I think that's the right environment for me. Not everybody can afford the big clubs or the big leagues and travel every weekend.
Yeah,
But if you have a coach that's genuinely invested in developing you and making you the best version of yourself, that's what I always liked about ODP. It didn't matter if you came from the biggest club in the state or if you came from a neighborhood club that only had maybe 2, 3 competitive teams. If you can play, you can play.
yeah,
I found one of my best players, Ethan. I found him found her at a 6-on-6 tournament that Eckerd College used to host. She was sitting on the bench at the University of Florida. They had 37 players on the roster. She was from Gainesville. That's all she ever wanted to do is wear the Gator colors. Wasn't seeing the field much because she was on the smaller side. But I was able to get her to transfer to Eckerd College. She's in the Hall of Fame. She's still the leading scorer of all time. And, it just shows me that the right environment, sometimes is the one that, appears right in front of you. But in terms of tryouts, I think it's all about development, the cost involved, and are you going to be a significant contributor to that team? And do they have any kind of either college support or college exposure? Some of the clubs I work with, that's the role I fill if they don't have a full-time person. But it's all about, are there opportunities for me to maybe play with a higher age group or a higher level if they're in a different league? But college coaches want to see players that can impact the game. Like you said, I get hired and fired as a coach sometimes because of my wins and losses. So
yeah,
if I find a player that can help me keep my job, keep my GPA up, does all the things I ask him or her to do, then that's what I'm looking for as a college coach. And for tryouts, it's just a matter of, you know, do you trust the coach's philosophy? Do you see similar minded players that are trying out? I hate this time of year with tryouts because, again, there's so much political garbage and
Yes.
so many pretends and promises that are made that are never kept. So do your homework, do your research on the coach, the club, and make sure it's going to be a good home for you, because you don't want to change every year. That doesn't look good for recruiting purposes, and you're always starting, from scratch.
Yeah.
So, why not go to a couple multiple tryouts? See what the level's like, what the coaching style, philosophy is, facilities. I think those things are important. But am I going to be a big fish in a small pond, or vice versa?
I love it. Siggy, you have so much knowledge in so many different aspects of the game. A big thing. So, obviously, with you being an administrator, you being a college coach, now you're working with so many different youth clubs. How can our members get in touch with you?
Yeah, the best way is I don't like seeing myself on video, so I wrote a couple of books. So if somebody wants to kind of do that themselves, I have a video course they can kind of consume as they want to, chapter by chapter. But you can find me on Instagram at NCP, which stands for Nagel College Planning _ Nagel College Planning. You can find me on Facebook under Siggi Nagele. You can find me on LinkedIn. But I'm an educator first and foremost. That's why I was excited about our partnership, our sponsorship, where each club can nominate one player that I'll work with for free as a courtesy to you guys. Because at the end of the day, whether they work with me as a client or I provide information that saves them some headaches and gets them to their eventual goal, which is to play at the next level, I've done my job. And that's what I take the most pride in. So it's all about education and guidance and, straightforward communication and information that they can use to pursue their dream.
Awesome. I love it, Siggy. Thank you so much. You are our special guest for episode 3. Siggy, again, I'm sure I'll be in touch with you elsewhere outside of this podcast, but thank you so much for being here.